Hello, this is Greg Allison of Green Greg. It's coming to you 18 June 2020 with a talk about isms and schisms as seen through today's prisms. The long-awaited talk about socialism, communism, capitalism, corporatism, and all those good fun topics. And what they mean for you and me and moving forward today for all of us as we work our way through the fray. So let's start with socialism. Seems to be a very popular topic these days. Socialism is typified by the social ownership of means of production. It's really a non-market system, although they have things called factors of market. It comes in different forms. There's nationalistic socialism and international socialism. National socialism is also known as Nazism. International socialism has come to be called communism. They have a little bit of differentship in the way they have ownership of property and production. But, you know, they both wind up being totalitarian systems typically, and they're not as far apart as one might think. Communism is typified by the common ownership of means of production. And these are the terms from Wikipedia. Socialism, social ownership; communism, common ownership. Okay, they do seem to be quite similar. Yes, they do. And then there's also capitalism, which is known by its private ownership of the means of production. And it is known for things like competitive markets, accumulation of capital. A lot of people think that's a very terrible thing these days. But really and truly, all of us don't even know what capitalism is these days and ages, because we're living in a society that's typified more by corporatism. Corporatism in our society is wherein the big companies have found favor with the governments, the bureaucracy, the agencies, to rig the game, to remove the competition, which should be typical in a true capitalistic society, by putting things in favor of the bigger corporations, which hurts the smaller guy and cuts down the competition. And you know, that's what you might see typically with a big bureaucratic system. What you get with what we have today, which is also a welfare state. We have social welfare, which gets us some degree toward socialism. So you might say we have a hybrid corporatism, socialism, large, big state, welfare state, deep state system. That's what evolves. Many things that evolves under the principles of power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. He who has the goal makes the rule, and yeah, even in socialistic systems you find that, or some other means of wielding power. And birds of a feather flock together. The three tenets that lead to corruption in all societies, especially when there's lack of freedom of choice, freedom of rights, and means of redress. We have a lack of individual freedom, the power to vote and choose at the individual level, which you typically get, especially in command societies, as are typified in how you organize and distribute systems under socialistic and communist type systems. They tend to be command-oriented, top-down planned. The Soviet Union had their 5-year plan. I'm sure everybody goes, well, we'll just have communes. We'll do it like that. Really? Show me one nation where that's working today. Of course, I'm not always the best fan of nations either. So, for all those who tell me that capitalism has failed, I'd say what's failed you is not capitalism, it's corporatism. And see my video about how the government is really run to understand why that's failing. Why the big companies and the agencies just supposed to regulate them are in bed with each other, arrayed against us, the people. How they don't serve our purposes. And you'll start to see why the deep state is such a problem today. And you get a deep state in any kind of system over time. It just grows. Because of those three tenets that I've been telling you about, the power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, as stated by Lord Acton. The tenet, there's always the benevolent dictator sometimes starting the system out because he's the father, but he usually dies off, falls out of power, and someone else takes over. If you should be fortunate enough to have the benevolent dictator. George Washington, in the case of the United States. Unfortunately, we had checks and balances enough in the system that when he agreed not to be king, we were covered. But we're told he was such a terrible person. And nobody's perfect. He has flaws, no doubt. All our founding fathers had the flaws, as do all people. That's why we need a system with checks and balances and freedoms, means of redress. Because all people have flaws. There is no system, spare none. There is no person, spare none, myself included, that don't have flaws, or at least what other people would deem to be flaws. Nobody's perfect in the eyes of everybody. Everybody has flaws. However, this move toward freedom is interesting. I've talked about freedom quite a bit. So let's go back to the pros and cons of socialism, communism, and capitalism. And before we do that, I'm going to say, my friends, the world's falling apart. You really need to grow your own food. That's first and foremost. I'm expecting major food shortages. Supply chains are on the verge of unraveling. I'll do another video on that soon. I'm getting some information about that, the challenges to that. And yeah, if you're not growing your own food, you're going to be in a pickle. Trust me. You want to make your own pickle. So you need heirloom seeds, seeds that you can plant and harvest the seeds from, so you can replant them the next year and years after, and then we don't have to go to the store again, because it may not be a store. Check my link to True Leaf Market. Excellent source for heirloom seeds. And also seeds for plants you can grow in your home, like microgreens. And I'll talk more about that kind of stuff in the future. And also, my friends, you should have been prepping years ago, but right now it's probably your last best chance to shore up on your preps. I'm telling you, I think the other shoes are about to start dropping fast and hard. You may not be able to go to stores again in a few months. I'm really expecting some dramatic, big changes. I hope I'm wrong. But the good source of prepping supplies is prepwithgreg.com. You can get $100 off a month's food supply that lasts 25 years, and all kind of other prepping supplies at My Patriot Supply. But you can get to My Patriot Supply and all their other wares through my link, prepwithgreg.com. Okay. Also, if you've not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and bang the update notification bell and click all to get updates to all my future videos. It's another way to support me and find out more about what's going on. Because this is part of my eyes wide open and head on a swivel kind of, and morality matters kind of news to tell you what's coming and how to understand the world we live in, so you can better prepare for what's coming. And maybe also so we can reach out and make peace to people who have been heavily indoctrinated. Maybe they don't know some of the lessons I'm about to teach. Very simple things. So I'm going to teach is going to be quick and simple. Socialism and communism, even corporatism, has the effect of removing your freedoms of choice, your choices. In a communist or socialistic market, it's the state that owns the means of production, the state, the people, however you want to count it, or some very few companies, very, very, very few select companies under corporatism, which we have today. As they narrow down more and more the choices, as they squeeze out the smaller guy more and more, those choices narrow down. So you don't have the freedom to choose unless you find some way to exercise it and maintain it yourself. See, in a communist society, typically the state makes everything. So they're not going to make too many varieties of everything because they're not going to compete with themselves. So in a system like that, there's just not much incentive to produce or not to produce as efficiently, because you're going to buy their product irrespectively. And also the labor itself doesn't necessarily have the, or management have the incentive to produce, because you're going to buy their stuff. You know, I've been to Russia, and a lot of people there still have the old socialistic ideas, and they don't understand what customer service is. And in a lot of areas, they're still learning that. You go into a store in America, and the typical response should be, "May I help you?" You go into the socialist store, and it's like, "What are you doing here?" And he makes the same money when you buy anything from him or not. I was a communist. See, I can talk about this, and I can talk about it uniquely because once upon a time, when I was a young lad, I was a communist in high school till I was 14 years old. I thought that was the best way to do things. I mean, Karl Marx had that neat little saying, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. Sounded good. A lot of the tenets of communism and socialism sound good. It sounds like it creates fairness. I had the impression that the corporate system was grossly unfair, that only through communism could you have fairness. That's what a lot of young people think today, and I believe that. And I believe that was the best way to address inequities and have a better world. But my 10th grade teacher, I have to walk around because the mosquitoes are coming at me. My 10th grade teacher gave me a little lesson. He taught me about the value of competitiveness. He taught me that, you know, in competitive markets, people work harder, they strive harder, they accomplish more for less because they always find ways to make things work better. You take a government agency's launch vehicle, compare it to what SpaceX is trying to do. That might be an example. Although, you know, hey, I'm currently working on that government launch vehicle. And there are some advantages of doing things that way in terms of assurance, but it comes at a big price. So what is your priorities? What do you want to pay for? I'm trying to walk away from this barking dog here. And the mosquitoes. So, and I do want to keep the camera where it's not shining into the sun. But, pardon me for dogs barking. So, to take this further, dogs distracted me. Makes my thought process draw off. What I'm saying here is that in a competitive system, much more is produced for far less, and you have more choices. You have a more prosperous economy. The prosperity of the West is due to capitalism, but we're losing that today. We really are. But that's why the West has had the economic prosperity that it has had. You take a society like Singapore. Singapore don't even have any natural resources, yet they have immense economic prosperity. Why? Because of the economic freedoms they have in Singapore. You take, and the people live well there. Japan has had resources, but, you know, per capita not as much, and they did really well for a long time. They have other demographic issues they're dealing with today with their aging population and other matters. They overborrowed in some things. But Japan is another example of that. I'm just noticing something. I'm seeing a whole lot of really big moss, almost like asparagus moss. Used to not see so much of that around here. Am I seeing this because of groundswell and minimum? Wow, you see both forest floors up north are covered with that. Hadn't seen it around here. Interesting. Getting more and more of it. That's nice. All right, all that aside. So the competitiveness nature of the free market system gives a lot of strength to it. But here's what the primary strength is. The real strength is you have choices. You can choose what you buy. You can choose whether you're buying for quality, for price, flavor, color, whatever you want to choose. And when you choose, you're voting. Every time you spend a dollar or any monetary unit on something, you're voting for that unit. That is a $1 vote for something that you like. And the more you vote for it, the more people that vote for it, typically the more of it there is. That's how the system should work. So you are rewarding the producers thereof. Now, that's an enormous freedom that you get with the free market system, competitive market. And that's what Milton Friedman called the freedom to choose. He wrote a book on that title. He did videos on that title way back when. He was an economist way back in the early 80s. I bought his book when it first came out in 1980, Freedom to Choose. Check it out. I've also used a sample he cited in there called A Pencil, talking about the complexity of society. All right, I can't do anything about the sirens. So, here's the other thing to know. It's that people aren't running out and fleeing from societies that have economic freedom, except in America. But our economic freedom is already limited by corporatism. So maybe we're mistaking it. It's corporatism that we need to deal with. You don't find people running to get out of Singapore, running to get out of Japan. You don't find people running to get out of Western Europe. And everybody says, oh, Western Europe's socialistic, Greg. Not as much as you think. They rolled a lot of that back. And what you find is that people do run to get out of communist and socialist states because they tend to be economically stifled, and moreover, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. They have command economies which lend themselves very much to the power structures of corruption. And corruption gets real graft into those societies. And where you don't have freedoms to defend yourself, you're nothing. You're nothing. You're nothing or nobody. You're just an economic unit. That's what someone would like to turn us into here today with the corporatism system, with the globalism system. And a lot of you think you're playing in the hands of taking down capitalism, but really and truly what you're doing in the end, if you look who's behind this stuff, you're really going to advance globalism and corporatism. I think it's got you think you're fighting capitalism. You're being played. That's what I fear. But you need to realize that capitalism is a very, very powerful economic engine. You know, at one time we did have a social safety net provided by churches and local community organizations, and people used to stay local a lot more than we do today because suddenly we're moving around a lot to chase industrial jobs. I hope my tribe movement can help turn that around. I think we can do stuff more locally again. They can reform communities, families, and tribes, and build in those social safety networks that we've always historically had without having to rely on Big Brother for it. Big Brother is not going to help us. Big Brother is going to squash us in the end. Trust me on that one. That is the agenda. They want to squash us if we allow it. So we need to try to preserve freedom, economic freedom, the freedom to choose, the freedom to vote. Vote with your dollar. And don't vote for those big corporations that have been trying to squeeze out the little guy. Vote for the little guy. Vote for your local person. Vote for the family. Vote for your neighbor. Buy their goods. And I would be very leery of buying from command societies like China. I have nothing against the Chinese people. It's the CCP that is of concern to me. Chinese people, there's lots of them that are wonderful people. I have good friends from China, lots of them. And a lot of smart, wonderful, brilliant, lovely people. I think they truly are. But they're under a regime. And you know, why else would it be that Hong Kong really don't want to go in? Why is it Taiwan that don't want to go in? Why do they want to take those places by force? Why do they have to take Tibet by force? Maybe what they've got to offer isn't that great after all, as a lot of you have been led to think. Yeah, it's been better than what the Chinese had, true, up to now. But at one point, Hitler gave a great value proposition to the German people. They loved him dearly until the full consequences came around of what he was promoting and doing. And then the country lay total waste. So that may happen in China. But then we have to be wary because China is the world's biggest producer. America's won every conflict by attrition, and we don't have the means of production to maintain that attrition today. And they're losing their commercial markets. They may turn their production more to military ambition. So they could be very dangerous. That's part of what I'm telling you may be coming. I'm going to do a video real soon about powder keg, bigger powder keg. You'll see. But suffice it to say, what I'm really talking about here is freedom to choose. Your freedoms. Your prosperity. You may think that the social justice that you would get through communism and socialism would get you somewhere. And will give you freedoms and justice, economic, yeah, it's going to make everybody more equal. Dirt poor, starving. Look at Venezuela. Greg, Venezuela's corrupt. Well, you get that corruption in command economies. That just kind of happens. It goes with it. Look at all the people that some of these dictators in these societies have eliminated to maintain their position. Stalin is said to have killed 60 million of his own people. Mao Zedong has been alleged to take another 20 million on top of that, 80. You know, look at Pol Pot. He had the Khmer Rouge. What did he do? Take out a third of his whole country? A third of the people? Some people think that's good. That's all right because we got social injustice. These people need to be retrained or out of... Yeah, I've heard that. I've seen that. That's in some of the doctrine. Is that the society you want to go down, the path you want to go down? What about your aunts and uncles? The innocent ones, grandmas, grandpas. We don't need the kind of conflict it would take to bring about a system like that. What we need to do is get our system right in the first place, to end the corporatism, to have true free market, to have true competitiveness, to really get rid of the competition from the big companies by using the government as their strong arm to squeeze out the small guys. To do that, we need to limit the deep state. And right now, there's somebody that's allegedly put up there to do that job. He's been totally beleaguered on every corner and inhibited from doing it, if it is indeed his intention. He seemingly is unable to get that accomplished. So other means must be found. Maybe 4 more years will accomplish that, I don't know. But we're in a pickle. The deep state's not our friend. Globalism will not serve you in the end. Globalism is not sustainable. You're not going to be able to ship everything around the world when the power grid goes down. That system will collapse. Your system is envisioned by the UN in 2030 for rack and stack by the railroad track just down the road from the big smokestack homes to shepherd you into will not be sustainable, because they have you living off corporate big pharma farms, eating frankenfood through machine robotic processing. The power grid goes down, all that just grinds to stop. And what are you going to know? How are you going to handle it if you're not on your way to the smokestack already? Now imagine that train to the smokestack to be really busy. Maybe. Hey, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. You could say this is just for entertainment purposes only. Big live action role play. There's a lot we don't know. I admit that. There's a lot we don't know. But there's a lot of suspicious things out there, a lot of things to keep your eye wide open and head on a swivel about. So that's why I'm talking to you. You got to keep the eye wide open and your head on a swivel. And the reason I tell you these things is the proposition of my channel. The proposition of my channel is to help you survive, thrive, and stay out of the hive. And grow your own so that you can stay alive. See, I got a garden here. I do some weeding. But you can see we're definitely on that mission in this place. All right. So, again, command economy is a system that grows out of socialism and communism. It limits your freedoms of choice and production dramatically. It becomes grossly inefficient. Things break down and people go hungry. The Soviet Union, when Nikita Khrushchev came to the United States, he was stunned by the American supermarket, all the stuff he could find there. It just blew his mind when he actually came here. Because that's what a market economy gives you. You know, in the Soviet Union, you had long lines waiting outside the grocery store just to get in. And when you got in, the shelves were pretty barren. And your choices were few. And the feud was pew. That's what you get in a system like that. See, Johnny Gardner was my 10th grade teacher that taught me the value of competition. But I changed from that time from being a communist to a socialist. It was real life that turned me from being a socialist to a conservative libertarian in favor of true capitalism to a large degree. And those lessons were learned by finally working in the government, by being immersed in it when I was in the Army. When I discovered that you weren't a customer when you went to somebody, you were a problem. When you went to the admin guys, they put your file on the shelf and your urgency meant nothing to them. Nothing at all. You might have needed to get it through real fast, but they were going to get to it whenever they got good and ready, not when you needed it. And, you know, when you go in the store, commercial store, like I said, they'd say, what can I do for you? And you can go into a system like that, they look at you and go, get out of here. Because there's no incentive for them to give you anything or help you in any way, not really. Now, some of them will to a degree, but it's a very different environment. I thought social justice was doing bad, but I was a private budgeting to try to buy food for my family, and I was buying dried beans and rice and maybe some dried macaroni on a good day, and I'd go in the store and I'd see people with 2 carts loaded up with meat with fingers full of rings and wearing new clothes, paying for it all with food stamps. And I'd always watch to see what they'd drive off in. It typically be a new car. That made me mad. That infuriated me. And also, Jimmy Carter, I mentioned him once, didn't I? Seeing his ineptitude for the way he ran the army, how we couldn't get spare parts, how I was almost sent to Tehran with only 20 functioning M16s out of a company of 250 people. Well, yeah, spare parts, that's what killed that operation to a large degree, right? Yeah, I had that problem in my own unit. Big time. Major. Bad. And we were about to get sent to combat like that. We were all packed up and ready to go. I was infuriated. And on top of that, there was the case of his little moon treaty support. He supported that UN moon treaty, which basically forbade the idea of private property in outer space and private enterprise. And I knew we'd never really truly be able to develop economy in space unless it was private, because it dawned on me by then you would have to have the engines of a private economy, because you can't expect the government to go in and spend trillions of dollars to build a city somewhere else. It would have to be done on an economic basis, up from the bootstraps. It's the only way it'd work. And I consider that crucial to the survival of mankind, so our eggs wouldn't be in one basket here on the third rock from the sun. So I consider that to be a direct threat to the survival of humanity, and I considered it evil. And his administration supported it. Fortunately, through the L5 Society and our political action, we kept the UN from signing that treaty. And then I discovered the power of political activism, how a small group of just 5,000 people was able to thwart the United States from signing a treaty that they would have signed. And we thought this treaty was, oh, this is very socialistic and communistic, and Russia was probably all behind and happy for it. And we found it really strange that the Soviet space scientists turned around and thanked us for stopping that. Then Russia didn't even sign it. It's like, wow, holy smoke. So we stopped a big global freight train. What we call the Moon Treaty, the UN Treaty of Celestial Bodies and Orbits in and around celestial bodies, namely or something like that. It was the next treaty after the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, for those that are familiar with such things. In any event, the L5 Society has the credit for that, and I was one of the political activists in the L5 Society when we accomplished that, and we only had 5,000 members at that point in time. So I always tell you that you can make a difference, and I know that's true. And it can start by the vote levied by you when you vote local. And also by just knowing how to organize your word and who to talk to and things like that. Congress may be arrayed against us somewhat, but in some cases they just have to respond, especially when you play their hand. So, my friends, there's a way. There's a way that we can regain freedom in our land. It depends upon you and me, and that's plain to see. So let's stay together, and let's ensure that we stay free as a country. We have economic and political freedom for everyone. This is not for any color, it's for everybody. I don't discriminate in that regard. There needs to be an equity. Everyone needs a really equal chance, and no one should ever discriminate, because there's good people of every race, creed, color, and background. This I know, and know personally, because my family is arrayed across the rainbow, if you will. But I definitely stand for our freedoms. Economic, personal, political, and together we can see freedom and prosperity and maintain the environment in this world. I believe, and one day not have all our eggs in one basket. I believe we can do all these things. So bear with me. I'm going to take you down that road. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Bye.